Welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to understand how the mind works, how the mind, the ego and the intelligence operates. In other words, the game of mind and how to play it. Before starting, we'll be understanding the concept of pleasure. What is pleasure? So we gather information through all our senses, and then that particular information is classified and categorized by our mind. Now, how the mind classifies such information? All the information is usually classified by the notion of whether to accept it or whether to reject it. The mind's judgment is basically based upon the perceived pleasure we can derive from a particular situation, object or a particular person. If we can derive some pleasure from it, the idea is accepted, and if if we have the feeling of pain or discomfort which it can cause, so the mind completely tries to avoid that by the act of rejection. This might seem like an oversimplification of the topic, but if we closely look into our patterns and how we make our decisions, we'll understand that this is how we all operate. However, people may have a very different opinion about what makes them happy or what makes them unhappy. For example, we can take a group which is a religious extremist group. So they believe that if they'll go to the war, they'll make a sacrifice, then that will make them happy, and definitely they'll be deriving the pleasure from that particular act of going to the war. Similarly, an atheist will reject the idea of the presence of a god, and they will try to follow their natural instincts, and that will make them feel pleasure. In both the cases, we understand that the people act very differently. However, the underlying motivation is completely same. That is how much pleasure we can derive from that particular action. We've all heard the quote that happiness is a state of mind. Everything can appear beautiful or ugly. It all is based upon our own mind's leaning. For example, a school bell which rings in the morning at 9 AM may sound irritating, but the same school bell at 4 PM will sound appealing or melodious. Let's take for an example, if we visit our favorite coffee shop or a favorite restaurant, we see our favorite milkshake on the menu. Our mind says yes, and we are very happy and very excited at that particular moment. We order that particular milkshake, and when the milkshake comes on our table, the mind is saying yes, yay, and you are so excited. You drink that particular milkshake and you are still happy, and your mind is still holding on to the yes card. But with the last sip, you see a dead cockroach on the bottom of the glass, and instantly your mind changes that particular card from yes to no. And this particular experience will not only just affect your particular liking towards this milkshake, but even in future, if you ever will be ordering that particular milkshake, your mind will recall this particular experience. If we eavesdrop on people's casual conversations, we'll understand that they are constantly making comparisons, they are constantly giving their approvals, they're giving their approvals or they're giving their disapprovals. The mind is constantly evaluating and a particular situation, a particular person, their particular idea, they're giving their agreement or disagreement. Through this pattern, we can identify that the mind is constantly evaluating, categorizing and weighing up its option. And surprisingly, these options and the evaluation of mind is very fickle. It is not permanent. It changes in a matter of second, like we understood in the previous example of that coffee or milkshake, we can say. Through these particular examples, we understand that the mind is untrustworthy. It is very weak when it comes to decision making and processing of any kind of information. The milkshake we discussed earlier, the milkshake has not changed, its flavor has not changed, but your liking towards that particular milkshake after this particular incident has changed 180 degrees. You can envision another scenario. For example, you're on a vacation, you're on a romantic holiday with your partner to the ocean, and imagine you are on an exotic island there. You're watching the sunset over the ocean and the golden ocean and hearing the gentle waves, sea waves, and the scene is extremely idyllic and it is peaceful and you could not think of being somewhere else. This is the best possible scenario. and you cannot imagine that you would want to be anywhere else. If not this, then nothing. You go back into the cottage to make something for you to eat. In that particular scenario, once you have ate and you came back to the shore and you see that your partner has met another sailor, and they are sailing off on a yacht on the same ocean, and they're sailing away from you. The same gentle waves, the same golden ocean will now, the same sunset will now feel like hell to you. It will seem like a hell upon that particular ocean. You won't be liking that scenario, right? So your mind simply changed the whole scenario based upon your experience. So what we can conclude is that the mind, the nature of the mind, you have an unbridled mind. The mind will tempt you to do certain things, and it will later condemn you for doing the same things. In a moment of seconds, it will, you don't want to eat something, but you will, at the moment you eat it, you will regret it, right? So that is the power of mind. It has an immense power to sway you. It will tell you that yes, I know we have tried this a lot of times, but I know this will be different. It has that power. As long as the mind's goal is to search out personal satisfaction, we cannot trust it, as it will demand something else. Once we have achieved that particular dream of yours, that particular desire of yours, that particular desire will be rejected by the mind, and it will demand the next desire. Following the demands of such a mind will only lead us down to the avenue of frustration, because we will never be satisfied. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us that trying to fulfill our lower desires is like putting out a fire through oil, by pouring oil in it. And for a moment the flames will subside, only to flare up even with greater, at a larger intensity. In Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna says Arjuna to control his mind, Arjuna replies that the mind is restless and unsteady, turbulent, obstinate and very strong, O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. Krishna agrees with Arjuna, but also gives a solution, saying, it is undoubtedly difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. From this discussion, we learn that mind's nature is active. Therefore, Krishna advises the mind has constant engagement, and that we practice detachment, so that we use its energy constructively. I would like to narrate a particular story of a poor man who found an exotic lamp on a deserted beach. So what happens is that he picked up that antique, and looking at the lamp, a genie rose from it and spoke, O great sir, good fortune has come about you. Now that you have found this lamp, whoever takes the ownership of this lamp has me eternally at their command to create all their dreams true. The poor man was astonished at this luck, and asked the genie, how many wishes do I have? The genie replied, once you become the owner of the lamp, you have unlimited wishes. The poor man was stunned, and his whole life was about to change. But then the genie warned him, however, there is only one condition. Once I have granted you your first wish, you have to keep me busy eternally. If I have nothing to do, I will have to devour you. After considering it for a few moments, the poor man was convinced that he could think of enough tasks to give the genie and to keep the genie engaged. And thus he agreed to become the owner of the lamp. And he requested his first wish. I want an estate with a palace, all the servants required to maintain it, and endless wealth. The genie bowed down. In 3 seconds, everything that the poor man had demanded was manifested. Feeling excited, the poor man said, now do the same for all my family members. The genie disappeared and again returned after 5 seconds and said, it is done, my master, give me the next command. The now rich man now thought of another task which would keep the genie engaged. He said that all the poor people in the world who are poor and who need food, wealth, and provide all those poor people with the needed requirements. He sighed and hoped that the genie would take away at least for some hours. but still the genie appeared in just 10 seconds asking for another task. For the rest of the day, the man gave Genie every single task to fulfill all his family's and his friends' desires. He barely had time to eat or talk to anyone. Regardless of what task he gave the genie returned in just a few seconds saying that the task has been completed. Now what happens is that the poor man now asks the genie, because he's tired, he's unable to think of any more task. He tells the genie to bring the wisest person available. So the genie brings the wisest man over there. Then the poor man asked the wisest man that told the whole story, that I became the owner of this particular lamp and now I have to give the task to the genie, and I'm unable to think of any of the tasks anymore. So I need your suggestion as to what I can do. So the wise man tells the person that ask the genie to plant a pole in the ground near your house. Command him to move up and down the pole continuously. When you need him, command him to come and give him an order, and when he is done, send him back to the pole again. The man sighed with relief, and as he wondered why he could not think of the simplest solution, he gave the order to the genie and finally could peacefully appreciate his new wealth. So how does this story relate with us? Our mind is like a genie. It is constantly active, producing more desires. When we know how to direct our mind, it is a great asset. But when we fail to direct our mind, it becomes our enemy, threatening to devour us. So what is the pole which we need in our life to give to our minds? It is the practice of meditation on transcendental reality. By hearing spiritual vibrations, when we direct our mind's energies towards spiritual sounds or spiritual activities, our mind becomes pure and we start to develop spiritual desires. We start to desire to take care of and serve other people, to improve ourselves, and to find and befriend more other spiritually inclined people and learn more about God. Now, dealing with the unwavering mind. Now, if the mind is so restless and unpredictable, how can we ask it to meditate? Right? The answer is, we find in the Bhagavad Gita that we should use our intelligence to control and evaluate reactions of the mind. To evaluate our minds, we need some type of reference. We need to choose principles and values to live by. Those who desire to evolve can find principles and values in spiritual scriptures as the Bible, the Quran, the Kabbalah and Bhagavad Gita. If we study these sacred texts and hear discourses on it, we strengthen our intelligence with transcendental knowledge, the knowledge that never ends. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the mind of those with steady intelligence is like the ocean, which is ever being filled but always peaceful. What makes the ocean so deep and so profound is that its depth, and which enables to allow the rivers flowing into themselves without affecting them. The ocean remains unaffected of no matter how many rivers flow into them. Likewise, when we connect with sacred scriptures, we deepen our intelligence. Thus, we can remain unaffected by our lower desires or challenging situations. We can strengthen our intelligence when we become principle-centered, adhering to our principles regardless of the resistance and arguments that the mind might present. Now the question arises that will we become miserable if we do not give in to our mind's demands? So research in the field of happiness studies has clearly concluded that individuals who exercise mind control and lived a disciplined, principled lives are far more satisfied than those who let their impulses dictate their lives. The example, one philosophy which follows this idea is hedonism, following hedonism instead of living the routine life. Now many people will come up with the question that is it rational to put our faith and trust into scriptures, and why scriptures? So we should understand that our intelligence is constantly being molded. If it is not by the scriptures, then it will be by the media, friends, teachers, society or the experience you are having. But if we allow scriptures to mold our intelligence, we will experience continuous growth. We are not meant to follow principles blindly. We should understand their value, how to apply them in each situation, and for our desired outcome. We must understand that we are actually soul and not a physical entity. And if we succeed in identifying that we are an Atma, and as a person who is on a journey, realizing that the physical and subtle bodies are only vehicles, then we will prioritize our spiritual growth. If we misinterpret the idea of the soul and the body, then in that case we become the drivers who are continuously driving. They don't know where they are going to, but they are more inclined towards maintaining the car. That you must not be concerned about the car's maintenance, but where you are actually driving to. You should know your destination, right? Of course, the maintenance of the car is important, but only as much as it enables us to continue our spiritual journey. What happens when people are obsessed with their cars instead of their journey? They forget where they have to go, why they are here, right? They forget that. However, if we can overcome this particular mindset and fix our minds that we are actually on a journey, the universe will facilitate ourselves, and it will help us to evolve and fulfill our desire, so we can experience exponential spiritual growth.